Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cricket Unfiltered. We are live on YouTube and we are recording for the podcast, of course. I'm Menczel, your host. I'm joined by my offsider, Paul Dennett. Paul, how are we this evening?
Hey, good manners. G'day, listeners. It's been an interesting few days in Australian cricket, and I've come to the viewpoint that I'm actually kind of happy at the reaction that there's been. The poor crowd that they talked about at the Perth Test match at the start of the year, and a viewpoint that maybe cricket has been losing some of its stranglehold on the national psyche. So the outpouring of fury and often irrational anger, at least it's a good sign that shows that the country do care. And it surprises me actually just how much the outpouring has been.
Yeah, I often say that, cricket is, Australia's real national sport. And when something bad happens, you can feel it starting on the East Coast and rolling across the Nullarbor to the West Coast. But let me introduce our guest. Now, for listeners, I'll just take you behind the curtain a bit. When we're recording our post-play Indian test wraps, we've got a WhatsApp group, and Paul and I throw in there when we're recording. And there's a few great female cricket journalists in there, Jaleesa, Fatima and Chloe, and none of them ever jump on with us. It's back to my childhood again. No dates. No one will join us for a post-play wrap. I think Gav jumped on once, which is lovely. He's charming. Not quite as charming as the other three. But for this podcast, we did get a date. Fatima, the popping crease from Twitter. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, what's going on with those post-Indian test wraps? I keep putting in the group. Keep waiting for you to jump on.
I work, man. I work.
Okay. Really? On Saturday and Sunday too? Wow.
I'm tired. There's a lot of cricket going on, okay?
It's funny because you're tweeting at the same time as we're recording.
Tweeting is different. Tweeting into I can do tweets in between stuff,
Yeah.
You really know how to make guests on the show welcome, Menczel. Well done.
Well, the fact anyway.
I have a very thick skin, so don't worry, I can take it.
A few weeks ago, I made the announcement that Fatima is going to be, more of a regular contributor to Cricket Unfiltered, and we're just so thrilled to have you. You actually haven't been on since I made that announcement, so welcome. We're so pleased you're going to appear more during the year, and hopefully, we can do some great podcasts and shows together on YouTube.
I'm very much looking forward to it. Thank you.
All right, so we have a lot to cover. We've got the Australia versus India series. We've got the Women's World Cup. There's bits and pieces of other news. But I just want to start with an email we got from, and a message we got from one of our listeners, Martin Lawrence. And his question was that, where is it? His question was basically that, from an outsider's point of view, and this is to you, Fatima, were you surprised that Australia have been wholeheartedly hammered in these first two tests?
Not at all. I think they talked a very big game after walloping a very poor West Indies and South Africa. They got a bit ahead of themselves, and I think they're just having a bit of humble pie at the moment.
Yeah, good. I sort of thought Australia would get smashed. The manner in which it's happened has surprised me, but yeah. All right, so Australia versus India. There's been some news today. David Warner is coming home. Ashton Agar is coming home, and Josh Hazlewood is coming home. Hazlewood has been ruled out of the one-day series afterwards, but Warner and Agar may go back for the one-day series. So some big changes. There's talks that maybe Lance Morris could come home too if Pat Cummins goes back. Paul, what are your thoughts around this squad? They've carried an injured squad. It hasn't quite worked out.
It'd be a pity if Lance Morris went home. He's been such an integral part of the side so far on this tour. I'd forgotten he was over there.
He hasn't had a bad performance.
Yeah, he's one of the few whose reputation has come away unscathed so far. Just before I get to that, I'd forgotten that the one-day series was on. And it just raises the question in my mind, why is the one-day series after the test series? I know that whenever there are negotiations between Australia and Indian cricket boards, India is in very much the position of strength. But surely Cricket Australia could have pushed for those to be swapped around. Now, the tests finish on the 13th of March, and the ODIs finished 9 days later. So that means that the Test series could have started 9 days later and either have the one-day series beforehand or stick the one-day series into the calendar at another point, just to give Australia a little bit more preparation, give the maybe to be able to balance those dual goals of having the Australians play in the Big Bash, but also have decent preparation for India. Now, to any Indians watching, I'm not using this as an excuse. This is obviously not going to change the result of the series, but just from an Australian administrative perspective, it seems strange to me that they weren't able to organise that, or maybe they didn't even think to.
Well, the one thing, India has not done us any favors. So, if that would give us more preparation for the Test series, that's a reason for them not to do it. And reports have emerged that when the Delhi Test finished in 3 days, the Australians requested practice facilities from the BCCI somewhere in Delhi, and the BCCI said, "Oh no, sorry, we can't find any." In a city of many millions of people with lots of cricket nets, they couldn't find one or two for the Australian team. So if they're not able to find nets, they're not going to do us any favor with the scheduling. In fact, I'm not surprised if the BCCI scheduled the Test series as close to the end of the Big Bash on purpose, just to make it tough for us.
But why? But just as an aside, if the Australians wanted nets, why hadn't they organised that months in advance? The odds are that the Test match is going to finish early. Cricket Australia is rich. They could have said, "Look, in the event that the match finishes early, could we please have these contingencies?"
Oh, no, come on, man. If that got out that the Australians had booked nets for the 4th and 5th day, there would be a national outcry. Like you can't do that. But
yes, you can. I mean, only people like you trying to rabble rouse would have an outcry over it. They could have said, maybe we expected to win the Test in 3 days. It's just standard, sensible, pragmatic planning. How many Test matches go 5 full days these days, especially in India? Not that many. It would have just made common sense to do that.
It's incumbent on the BCCI to be better hosts. Fatima, this is why we got you on, the tiebreaker. What do you think?
Cricket isn't known to have common sense at the best of times. So, and India, I'm afraid to say anything against India because,
Well, running scared already.
Well, I was at a Cricket World Cup game with India and New Zealand, and I made the mistake of clapping when India lost a wicket. I feared for my life.
Look, all the Indian fans I've met are reasonable, rational, very fair. So, I think you shouldn't be scared, Fatima. So there was more news from the Australian camp. The head selector Tony Dodemaide spoke basically last night, I think, in India. Concerning to me, but he basically said, Matt Kuhneman has leapt over Ashton Agar, and he has no good reason as to why Agar was brought ahead of Kuhneman. He just said, Ashton's sort of been a left arm spinner for a while, and that's why we kind of brought him. Not really. Even when he was pressed by Dan Brettig about the performances of Agar and Kuhneman being vastly different, Kuhneman showing potential in Sri Lanka last year and Agar performing so badly in the Sydney Test, Dodemaide had no real answer for that. He did say Matt Kuhneman got Kohli the best player in the Indian side, which worries me because I don't think Kohli's been the best batter in the Indian side for a few years. So if a head selector's saying stuff like that, no wonder we're struggling. And he did say about the spinners that Todd Murphy has emerged as the second best spinner in the country. Thoughts, Paul?
I don't understand why they can't be more open. I mean, it would have been perfectly acceptable in my mind for them to have said, we felt that Ashton Agar, most of his career has either been in white ball or when it's red ball in Australia, no left arm orthodox spinner very much succeeds in Australia. We expect that he would come to India and do really well. However, since we've been over here in the nets, he has been unimpressive. And so as a result, we've made the logical decision to bring in another left-arm orthodox spinner to leapfrog him. I must admit, I didn't hear the press conference, but it just seems like that a bit of plain speaking would have been appreciated and not all that controversial.
Yeah, agree. And then the other news that came out, which I find so strange, Mitchell Starc was available for selection in the last test, but they chose not to pick him. So, when that sort of Cummins bowled no overs in the second innings, hardly any in the first innings. We had there was a long partnership of the tail, and they just didn't pick Stark. Dynamite said he was only 99% fit, but Stark said he was fit to play. He was available. I find that shocking.
I didn't know that he was fit to play.
Yep, he was fit to play.
Well, then why wouldn't you play him?
Exactly. It's like the World Cup last year against Afghanistan.
Well, I think that the problem is there's 2 points here. One, I don't think that Stark is the saviour that many are sort of touting him as. He's a good bowler. He's a very good bowler. But I just think that in Indian conditions, yes, I know that his speed can take the pitch out of the equation. And yes, he gets some reverse swing. But I still think it's a lot to expect a seam bowler to dominate in India. So I think that had we picked Stark instead of Cummins, for example, then I think Stark might have bowled a little bit better. He certainly can bat better, although Cummins got some runs in this match. But I don't think it's the big... I think that the notion that Stark coming back into the side for the second half of the series is going to make a big difference. Well, I hope it does. But then it comes to the other point. If they thought that they would have preferred to pick Stark, but they felt compelled to pick Cummins because he was the captain, then that's as I've been saying and I said it at the time when Cummins was made captain. I'm absolutely fine with him being made captain. I like him being made captain, but there needs to be an awareness that from time to time, and I think I even said in India in a long test series, there may come a point where he is not to be included in the side because we've got a preponderance of spin bowlers, maybe he needs to be rested or whatever else, that should be able to be done and not be controversial. If they are saying, he's the captain, he has to be in the side leading from the front, and they've therefore not chosen what they consider to be the best 11 as a result of that, then that's crazy.
But didn't they say that when... Sorry. Now, didn't they say when he was made captain that they would monitor his workload and pick him for certain games and not pick him for others because of that reason?
Yeah, but I think it's more like one-day cricket that they'll do that, but for test matches, there's still that. I think it's a dual thing. Number one, they know that there'd be an outcry, and number two, I think that they still think the position of captain is so important that the side would be directionless if they made the change. It'd still be in the dressing room. I just think that, I said what I said, and I think, what do you think, Menes?
I totally agree with what you said, and I actually think the selectors it was a cop-out. They just thought, well, if we just don't consider Stark, we don't have to make the decision for Stark versus Cummins. The selectors are having a terrible tour. I heard Jeff Lawson, the former Australian fast bowler, talking on SEN today, and he made a good point that between all these so-called brains trust of Australian cricket, none of them have much experience playing in spinning conditions. Bailey, McDonald, Donamaid, Cummins, none of them have a lot of experience in these sort of conditions. So why are we expecting them to be experts? And I've got some more stuff to talk about. We'll get there, but that's the one thing. Just while we're on Cummins, really sad situation that he's had to come home for family reasons. A few people have pointed out that I said Cummins might not be picked or might not be playing for all of this series. Obviously, that had nothing to do with his family situation. And, I just hope that's going okay. I take no joy in that at all. Paul, you're getting a bit annoyed about the way Cummins is being treated.
Yeah, and it's only a minority. But so let's establish a couple of things. One, I think there's plenty to criticise about his fielding positioning, and the way that Australia played. Obviously, his own shot in the second Test match. All of that is ripe for criticism and deserves to be criticised. I think there's some very bad things that happen there. But I'm even okay with people, as you have, Menes, expressing disappointment that the way that Justin Langer was removed out of the side and ascribing some of that to Cummins. I don't agree with that, but that's valid. It's a legitimate point. But the people who have said, because Cummins has backed out of the deal with Alinta Energy, and that he's woke and carbon Cummins and all these nonsensical terms, to then think, this Australian side, sort of almost by extension, are sort of soft and they're too worried about political issues and everything like that. That's just absolute nonsense. As an aside, the Australian captain is a very high-profile position, and if we've got someone who's got the conscience to speak out about the biggest crisis ever facing human civilization, then I'm all on board on that. And for people who say, it's very one thing for him to urge more action on climate change, but then he's flying around in business-class planes. That's got nothing to do with it. If we have the political will to fix climate change, we could. It doesn't require individuals to not go on flights. It's a political thing, and the world needs to move towards that position. So Cummins, making a couple of very minor statements along those lines, has somehow found himself dragged into this insane culture war that we have in Australia and other countries. And I just think, God, these people, they do my head in. I think he's a likable guy. I'm really happy that he's the Australian captain. I think his tactics in the second test match were poor. I think his shot was poor, but I'm still eager for him to remain the Australian captain.
What do you think of him, Fatima, from afar?
I do like Cummins. I think he's a very, very good cricketer, and I think he's just gotten a very hard job early in his captaincy career. But if he doesn't play, who would be made captain?
Steve Smith, I think. Yeah.
Do you think so?
Well, he's vice captain.
And that's what happened when Cummins got COVID in the Ashes.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Okay. But no, I like Cummins.
Nice.
Aussie.
So I want to talk a little bit more about some of the news that's emerged since the second test. Now, I said before this series that I didn't think the McDonald-Cummins method would handle the pressure test. And I think I've been proven right now. Michael Divinito, the batting coach, has talked about chaotic scenes in the dressing room during the collapse. Steve Smith coming off and blowing up about playing the sweep shot. And he said that it was absolute chaos in the dressing room. And Divinito said something very perplexing. He said, I thought the other batters would have worked out from Smith's reaction not to play the sweep shot. But isn't it incumbent on Divinito, the batting coach, to go up to maybe some of the lower order batters and, hey, look, I think this pitch is going up and down. Maybe we should just put that shot away for a few overs. Certainly get your eye in. It sounds like there was a lot. Sorry, there's just a background noise coming through. I just muted you. It's like some
gardeners.
No worries. Always the way. I might just mute you. So yeah, I was saying. So it sounds like chaotic scenes in the dressing room. And yeah, I just think this is a poor reflection on the coaching staff and Divinito says he doesn't feel like he needs to go and talk to the batters. That just, I don't know, it seems very strange to me, Paul.
Oh, I mean, it was a diabolical situation to lose 9 for 52. There's no nice way of saying it. And some of the shots were appalling. And I think that all the criticism that they're going to get is fair enough. I don't think it means that the McDonald and Cummins partnership has failed the test. I think it is also worth emphasizing that I saw a tweet that maybe this Indian side is the best home team in the history of cricket. And you could certainly make a case for that to be. I think these are stats from before the series that they'd had in the last 10 years, 43 test matches at home, lost 2, won 35. Now, you can't find any side in history that's done that. So I think it always has to be up against the backdrop of this side may well be the best home side in the history of cricket. And Australia ultimately in the second test match lost by 6 wickets and had positions during the game where they were in a winning position. Before the Axar Patel and Ravi Ashwin partnership, they were well ahead. And then at the start of the final day of what turned out to be the final day, it was probably neck and neck. And they certainly had an opportunity to win. What then followed was absolutely indescribably bad, and they deserve every criticism they get. But I think you've got to look at the overall context and say, ultimately, it's a very, very good Indian side. It would be a pity to tear down what I think is potentially a pretty good captain-coach partnership on the basis of that. I think that their record up till now has been good. Let's see how they go in the rest of the series in the World Test Championship final and in England before we kind of come to total judgments.
I think as well there is the thing that you've got to give McDonald and Cummins time to improve. So, you got to give them time.
Just going back to the coaching, I have a big problem with batting coaches thinking, no, these are proper test players. They don't need coaches. They need coaching.
We might just have to mute you for a sec.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think it's certainly if it's the batting coach himself who's saying that they don't need coaching, that's a bit bizarre. So yeah, I find that amazing, those comments. I haven't. Where did you read that from, Michael Di Venuto, Menes?
There was lots of reports about it. He did a press conference in India, I think, yesterday or the day before. The other thing is, what do you think about, Paul, that Matt Hayden hasn't at all been consulted about how he conquered those wickets? Not once for this tour. He's on tour as a commentator. Not one of the Aussies has sounded him out and said, how do you bat on Indian conditions? Because he made really good points. He said, what you do is the ball's going up and down. You play straight when it's on the stumps. So you've got less chance of missing it, and then you sweep on line. So I guess if it's wide of off or leg stump, you can pull out the sweep shot. Now, why wasn't that grabbed from Hayden by the Australian team?
Well, I mean, apart from anything else, maybe he should actually be in the side. He's probably still good enough to play that well. I think it's a good point, and I wonder if it's because there's a bit of a feud there. I think that he is, probably the number one supporter of the Justin Langer camp, and I think there's probably a little bit of bad blood between them. But that should be put aside. I've had my criticisms of Matthew Hayden as the commentator, but I did hear him on our friend Pete Lawler's podcast, Cricket etc. the other day. He was just wandering by, and they sort of stopped him and got a few comments. And I think those are the comments that you're talking about there, Menes. When he's talking seriously about batting and not being sort of faux enthusiastic, or maybe it's just his genuine, maybe he just is happy and much happier with his life than I'm with mine, and maybe his enthusiasm is not confected. But when he talks seriously about batting, he makes a lot of sense. And I think, yeah, absolutely, he should be consulted as to what they should be doing. Give me the choice of who I'd rather as a batting coach in Indian conditions. Out of Michael Di Venuto, Matthew Hayden. It's probably unfair because I don't know what Di Venuto is like, but on the surface of it, I'd probably pick Hayden.
And what about, all summer, at the end of summer, Usman Khawaja was like, oh, we haven't had to do a warm-up all summer or anything like that. So it sounds like to me there was plenty of time for them to start working on their game against spin. You could be preparing for this tour right throughout the summer, working on your shots and all that stuff. So I think this tour is just going to is an absolute disaster. And, they can turn it around, but, Cummins might not go back. So you'll have Smith captaining, which might be better because he's more adept at those conditions. But at this stage, my 4-0 prediction is still rusted on.
Well, we're both halfway to our predictions. You're halfway to your 4-0 and I'm halfway to my 2-all. So yeah, it's neck and neck, mate.
Are they still cutting down a forest where you are, Fatima?
Yeah, they're going away now.
Great, thank goodness. I mean, for those listening, this is podcasting. Just what happens as soon as you decide to go live, they decide to go and just fucking trim your garden. Well, welcome to the show. Welcome back. What's your prediction for the Indian this series again from here?
At the beginning, I said India would win, but I didn't. I think I maybe said Australia might win one. I'm changing that to 4-0.
4-0, yes, okay.
But the thing is, it's not. People are saying on my Facebook page, India adopted wickets, it's adopted pitches. It's not. It's India. It's going to spin. Just deal with it better.
Agree. I don't think the wickets have been that bad. I do find all the shenanigans around not having training wickets for us when the first test ended and when the second test ended pretty pathetic. So, you can be a better host than that. And I don't even think they should just laugh at us. I don't think it'll make a difference if we're in the nets for a day or two extra. We're still probably going to get bowled out in 30 overs. So, what are they scared of?
I've talked before about the mindset behind the preparation of pitches and how I've said that I think that the home ground advantage should be you get to play in your familiar conditions, that the curator should be left to prepare the best possible test wicket and that it shouldn't be up to the home boards to influence the curator, which, as I've maintained, is the case in Australia, that for all the things we do wrong, our curators tend to be independent. But having said that, I don't think that we can blame these 2 wickets. I thought they're excellent cricket wickets. I haven't enjoyed 2 test matches as much as this in a long time. They were fantastic pitches. Maybe... I suppose if you're being absolutely perfect, you'd say that the matches could have lasted a bit longer, but then you'd say, well, maybe the Australians could have batted a bit better. So I think that there were parts of the Delhi Test match that, now that the result has been so bad, it's kind of coloured my view of it. But there's some of those sessions that I thought were some of the most entertaining Test cricket I've seen in a very long time. So yeah, I think that the 2 pitches have been absolutely fine. I
mean, like you say, Australia were on top for a good percentage of that test. If they just played a bit better, they could have, if they just batted and didn't do the sweep shot so often, they could have maybe taken it to a day 4, and who knows what could have happened.
But that's what's so galling about it. The fact that they just threw it away with, a cavalcade of the worst shots I've ever seen. Yeah, just drives me nuts.
Yep.
That's what pressure does to you, though.
Yeah. And it's particularly sort of pressure when you play India in India that the game suddenly goes on fast forward and you just suddenly see what did we lose? 4-0. That happens over there. And we went from 3 down with a lead of approaching 100 and looking like we were probably not getting our nose in front again to 4 balls later. It wasn't 4 balls, but you know what I mean. Basically the game was over.
Basically 4 balls.
Yeah.
but I just want to go back because I got a bit distracted with the mower just getting into my ears. But I just want to say I do stand by my point. I don't think the McDonald's Cummins system handles the pressure test. You can't just be all laissez-faire because that's fine when you're winning, but as soon as the pressure comes on, they lost their fucking shit. So I'm sorry, but I'm going to stick to what I said. High level sport has always intense pressure, and just trying to say, we'll just be relaxed and float around is absolutely going to come unstuck.
No, but I don't think that's I don't think that's in any way accurate what you've just said as a way of characterizing what has occurred. And I think that the reality was that under Langer, for all the good that he did, there was a point where they were saying we're walking around on eggshells. He's too much. And I talked again about that time when Finch in Pakistan had reached 50, then jumped down the wicket and was about to crack the ball over mid-on for 4. And thought, I'm under pressure, I better not, and ended up hitting it straight to mid-on and got out caught. Later on, when he got out and didn't review because he wasn't sure, Langer was excoriating him for not reviewing within a few seconds of him getting out. I think it's things like that gradually over time, they said, actually, we don't need this. Things like in a net session when Khawaja arced up at him, how every time you get out, we're doing a total rotation because we're trying to stop batting collapses, as though batting collapses can be stopped by just really wanting hard enough to not collapse. And to say that they've then gone in and said, McDonald's coming, everybody, let's have a relax. Why do we need to train? We can just all have a nice sleep.
That's what's happened.
No, it's not what's happened.
It has what's happened. Khawaja said it. The end of summer. We've had no warm-ups all summer. He said it. So I'm not making it up. And I don't want to go back to Langer. I'm looking forward. Just McDonald and Cummins, it's not working. And put under pressure, they're folded like a pack of cards for 30 overs, 2 matches in a row. Maybe the way forward is someone like a Jason Gillespie.
I just don't think you've got the knowledge to say that. And I think that one quote from Khawaja does not confirm that they have just not been professional. And I
don't know. I'm not saying they haven't been professional, but they've just got this, we'll just, relax, keep it all very calm in the dressing room. Everyone just does what they want. It's about executing your plans and doing the 1%ers right. And everyone just work on your own stuff. I just don't think it works.
I just think that's, they're just words. Like there's no substance to that argument. It's like I don't know. It sounds like a corporate gibberish.
But that's what they say. That's the corporate gibberish they say. We're working on our plan.
Menczel, I agree with you.
Thank you, Fatima. Thank God we got.
But just because I know what happens, why we think we know what happens when South African cricket, when Neil Mackenzie was coach, they didn't have any coaching. They all did their own thing, made sure they had their plans in order, and batting collapse after batting collapse. It was horrific. So yes, I can see that how this is happening with Australia now.
But I mean, you've got to take both sides of it. They absolutely obliterated England. They obliterated the South Africa and the West Indies. They beat Pakistan and they drew in Sri Lanka. Vastly better results than we've had in previous times. So clearly the method, if you're going to say the method is significant, it was working then. It's not working now. I don't buy either of it. I actually don't think that the difference would be all that significant. I think it's ultimately that India are a better cricket side in India than Australia are, and that the Australian side we're a bit sick of in general, Langer being a bit too full on. And now that he's gone, I think probably the way that they're approaching things is still rather similar. And so to say that they're being too relaxed and that's what's led to it, I just think disclose your cricket betting records, because I think you'll be in loss if that's the sort of judgment you take to form them.
Well, we've got a comment here from someone that's got, bring it up. He's upset his lost some money because of your picks. Anyway, we'll go through that one. Anyway, let's move on because I want to talk about some other cricket. A start from the Australia versus India series. So let's move on to the Women's T20 World Cup being played in your backyard, Fatima, in South Africa. It's semi-final time. And amazingly, South Africa have scraped in with 2 wins. So they'll be playing England in the second semi-final. And in the first semi-final, it's Australia versus India. And an absolutely mouth-watering fixture. So the 2 big semi-finals. Before we get into those, Fatima, leading into this World Cup, Dane van Niekerk was ruled out because she didn't pass a fitness test. We haven't had you on the show since then. What's your take in the way the whole thing played out?
It was very difficult for the selectors and Cricket South Africa. They were stuck between a rock and a hard place. They can't do for one what they didn't do for the other, and the other was Lizelle Lee. They didn't play her because she didn't pass the fitness test, and then she wound up retiring. So they can't do for one and not for the other. That's double standards. But she's the captain. She's such an integral part of the team. She's such a great strategist and cricket mind, and she's such a key player for them with bat and ball. They could have maybe done something to just give her another chance. I mean, she lost 10 kilos of weight. It was the best time she'd ever done in the speed test. It's not like she hasn't improved. Just give her another chance or do another test. Get her in somehow, because they're very clearly missing her.
That's exactly what I would have thought. That and to some extent, the second half of your answer kind of contradicts the first half, that you're saying that they couldn't do something special for her, but they should have done something special.
This is the rock and the hard place.
But I think that they could have written it in. They could have said, okay, guys, this is something new, but we are going to have these fitness standards, which are a good thing. And if you don't meet the standard, it will put your position in the World Cup under jeopardy, but we will look at it at a case-by-case basis. And then when they looked at her in a case-by-case basis, say, she's been injured, we're going to say that had she not had the injury, we reckon that she would have been probably about 19 seconds faster, and we'll give her that level of sign off, because they didn't bring this in order to stop her from playing. So they should have had the foresight to realise that let's look ahead at some of the murky waters that might occur and write it into the position so that they could have done something like that. And I think then that would have been fine.
But then they also could have played her.
Yeah, but such a small percentage that she was over the time. They could have had that written in. Just there's a little window either way. Like that's the target. But if you're just short, by a certain percent, we'll still let you in. So it was very silly.
But they could have played her in the Tri-Series before the World Cup to give her match time, see how she performed there. If she performed well enough, fine, she's match ready. But they didn't even give her that chance. Yeah,
and I think it's them having the laudable aim of saying, right, we've got a one rule for everyone, but they've kind of, by trying to be scrupulously fair, have ended up cutting off their nose to spite their face. It is a little bit similar to another South African, Mickey Arthur, the homework gate back in 2012, that he could have brought that in and found a way to, at least tap the guys on the shoulder the night beforehand and say, guys, please do this homework because I don't have to send you home. There's ways and means of kind of having a foot in both camps, I think.
Fatima, I mean, South Africa, find unique ways of sabotaging World Cup campaigns. This is just another example, ruling out your captain for 18 seconds, I think it was. And, you look at the sort of effect, Dane van Niekerk's wife, Marizana Kapp, is such an important part of that side, what that might have done to her psychology. But, they've scraped into the semi-finals. So, England v South Africa. England heavy favourites, 4 wins. South Africa just got through on net run rate with 2 wins. Do you give South Africa a chance at home in the second semi-final?
It depends on how both teams play. If South Africa played like they did last night, no chance in hell. If England have a bit of an oopsie day, you never know. England have been brilliant, but on the day we saw with in the SA20, the Pretoria Capitals were the most consistent team, but they fluffed it in the final. So you never know what could happen on the day. So England, yes, I picked them as favourites, but South Africa might just pull a rabbit out of the hat. You don't know.
And I look at that South African team and I think they are really missing Dane van Niekerk. Like, they don't have the luxury of Australia have of, to leave out a player of her class. So yeah. I think if, a couple of players like Cap have, amazing games, she's won plenty of T20 games on her own in the past with bat and ball. So she's an X factor. And then the first semi-final, go on.
No, so it was compounded. Their performance is compounded by the fact that Laura Wolfart wasn't performing as, to her ability in the previous game. She came good last night with a 60 odd, but I don't think it was as fluent as she would have liked. So she needs to be on her A game on Friday.
I really like watching her bat in the WBBL for the strikers. I think it is a very good player, the title-winning strikers. And then the first game, Australia versus India. Australia 4 wins, India 3 wins. That's going to be a really good game. India have had some success against Australia in the T20 World Cup in 2020. They won the first game. In the 2017 50-over World Cup, they upset Australia in the semi-finals. Australia go in as heavy favourites, but India do have an exciting spin team, and they've got Smriti Mandana and Harmanpreet Kaur who are batting really well. So they could spring an upset, but, you'd never bet against this Australian side.
Is Elise Perry going to be fit?
Well, not sure. I was looking at the press conference today, and I don't think Healy or Perry have been confirmed fit or unfit yet.
Should Talia McGrath be batting higher up in the order? I mean, I as I have sometimes in T20 cricket, I have a concern that if she comes out without enough balls to in which to sort of make a difference, that can be concerning. I mean, Australia's going so well so far, but there'll come a time when they need to put on a bigger first innings, and I'm just worried that possibly our most aggressive player is batting too low.
I don't mind where she is. I just, it's such a good batting lineup. I think, coming in at 4 or 5 is good for her. But it does depend. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, go on.
Now, look at England with Nat Skyver-Brunt coming in so low down the order. She's put in some match-winning performances. So I think it's good to have someone low down the order that you can bank on.
I think that's the orthodox viewpoint, and I'm just a bit crazy, and I don't subscribe to that. I think that you should play your batting order in T20 cricket should be just about in order of strike rate, and that you want to give your best players the most opportunity to face the most balls. And the notion of a specialised finisher coming in at the end, I mean, I can see most people think that way, but I'm not convinced by it.
Right, now I just want to touch on an article by Ben Horn in the News Corp papers here. And he's got some quotes here from Megan Shute, and it's about the way female cricket is sometimes spoken about. So I just want to read some quotes here. This is from Megan Shute. Some assholes can say things like, "You've been coerced because your teammates are same sex." Lots of cricketing boys used to say that when they found out I was gay, Shute said. Coercion. Everyone in cricket is gay. That's why you're gay. And this is from Megan Shute. That comes back to thinking that gay is a choice, which obviously it is not. It is also a way to bring you down and say, you already shouldn't be here, and you're gay. I don't really like half-assed diversity. It's great Cricket Australia goes with a Pride Month. They changed their logo for a month on Twitter, and that's great. But they're not probably doing enough outside of that to continue that inclusivity. So really strong comments there from Megan Shute. And if you want to sort of hear more from her, I interviewed her on Mena's Masterclass where we talked about these things. So go into the podcast app and you can really hear her views in fuller context. But start with you, Fatima. How is female cricket viewed in South Africa? Do you hear these sort of comments?
I think you just have to look at the crowd attendance to know how it's viewed here. It's had sellout crowds all games. It's the support for the women's team is incredible. They're supported more than the men's team, honestly. Their passion behind the team, everyone's rooting for them. It's absolutely brilliant. Never a bad word spoken about them, really.
Okay, well, that's good.
Yeah, I think it's a good set of quotes from Megan Shute. It's the sort of thing that probably doesn't get said enough, and it's a brave thing to say, but I think there is that ridiculous perception. So it's good that she's exploding it, but she shouldn't have to. But unfortunately, I think there is still a minority who have those kind of backward thoughts. So good on her.
Yeah, I have to say I was, during the Sydney Test this year, a senior bigger cricket journalist said comments similar to that about female cricket, and I pulled them up on it. It was a one-on-one conversation. I was very surprised to hear those comments in this day and age, and I said I didn't think they were accurate. And so it is still sort of an undercurrent there, and it is very unfortunate. I think Megan Shute makes a point that maybe Cricket Australia is not going far enough with its Pride stuff. And, the Sydney Sixers did not do a Big Bash Pride night. They did a WBBL Pride game, but they resisted from doing a men's Pride night. So I wonder, there's been a backlash here. I think it was which club was it? Manly, Paul, in the rugby league, that were asked to wear Pride jerseys, and some of them didn't want to because of their religious beliefs, whatever. So maybe there's a feeling from Cricket Australia and some of the Big Bash clubs, they don't want to get their hands dirty. But Paul, I think Shute's got a point there.
Yeah, I think there probably is a little bit of that they saw what happened with Manly, and that was very poor, I thought, the way that the Manly players behaved. So it would be good to see that in future. So again, I endorse what she said for sure.
All right. Anything you want to add, Fatima, before we move on?
No, I'm good.
Great. All right. Let's get into England versus New Zealand. England is Fatima's side. She said to me before we started recording she was British, so she must support England and the Three Lions. They are in New Zealand.
Your tongue.
Well, you've got the English accent. I mean, surely you support your home nation.
I'm very proud to be a Brit, but hell no. I don't support England.
Turns on her own. So England are playing in New Zealand. There was a day-night test last week. We'll start with the on-field stuff. England Bazball held up to the test. They beat New Zealand by 267 runs. Now, we're in real Dennett areas here. This is Dennett plus a million. They declared in the 59th over on day one on 9 for 325. Paul, is this not, you must be so happy with this?
I love the way that they play the game, and I just like that they are playing it with freedom, and that they're saying, if whether you agree that it's the right thing to do to declare at that time, that they are willing to back themselves and not afraid of the consequences of getting something wrong. It's remarkable. There's an actual backlash on Twitter from some sort of masochistic minority of people who are saying, no, Test cricket's not meant to be so entertaining. Bring back the boring, turd defensive. It's like they watch Test cricket to sort of punish themselves, and now this is too much fun. And I think, God, that's that's a strange. The funny thing is, I can almost understand where they're coming from as well. You've spent a lifetime of, oh wow. I remember reading. Sorry to digress, but the 1977 Australian Tour of England, after the tour, Greg Chappell and David Frith, the cricket journalist, co-wrote a book together. And David Frith went through the play-by-play, and it's amazing. At one point, 2 boundaries were hit. It might have been 3 boundaries were hit in the space of 2 overs. And he's whoa, what's going on here? It's so many people are thinking, wait a minute, I've gone through my whole life of just having to grind out this watching of Test cricket, and now it's just sugar and spice and craziness all of a sudden. People can't handle it, but I think it's great, and I can't wait for the Ashes. And I don't think that in the Ashes it's going to just be them coming out and playing reverse sweeps off the second ball and doing all sorts of silly things. I think they'll just play with the same freedom, and when it's time to defend, they'll defend.
They better come out and play reverse sweep.
But do you not think New Zealand's bowling helped them a little bit? The bowling wasn't exactly brilliant, and they went in with a poor team, basically. New Zealand did. They didn't go in with proper bowlers, and bowlers playing out of position. Wagner is not an opening bowler. And I just want to go back to Stokes declaring he wouldn't have done that if that was a traditional test match. He only did that because it was a day-night test.
Yeah,
I agree, but it's still pretty amazing.
Yeah.
That they got there.
But it was clever.
Yeah, very clever, and makes sense. 9 down. Why bat Jimmy Anderson when you can be bowling with the pink ball? Just back on your thing, Paul. If Baz was coach of Australia, Tim David and Glenn Maxwell might well be opening on this Indian tour. And just on that test match, Broad and Anderson took 8 wickets combined in the second innings, which takes them past Warner McGrath as the leading wicket taker the leading wicket-taking duo in international cricket. So congratulations to those champions.
Congratulations to them. Absolutely. I don't like how it's just written in sort of bold language on this now makes them the most successful partnership in cricket history. It's the most prolific wicket takers, but I wouldn't say that they are the greatest partnership of bowlers in the history of Test cricket. I find that's an unnecessarily, maybe it's just lazy, but it's an unnecessarily provocative statement because they're fantastic bowlers, but there are others who have been better.
Like James Anderson's probably not in my top 20 fast bowlers I've ever seen. He might, maybe around 20. Very good bowler in English conditions, but not in the top 20 I've ever seen.
That's why I get so frustrated with Steyn and Anderson. Who's better? It's obviously Steyn. Always going to be Steyn.
Like 6 miles is better.
Your statement then will offend some English people, but I think I'm probably around about the same. I reckon if I sat down and listed all the fast bowlers I've ever seen, Anderson probably would come around about 20th, which is an amazing achievement.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not being provocative.
It's just like there are, when you look at the others, you go.
There's 10 West Indians ahead of him already.
There's not 10, but there'd be at least 6, I reckon. Ambrose, McGrath, Ambrose. Let's do it. Ambrose, Marshall, Garner, Holding, Walsh. Those 5 are better than him. Probably Andy Roberts. That's 6. There you go. Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, good. Fantastic bowler.
I want to touch on something quite a concern from that Test match. Now, Scott Kuggeleijn was picked for New Zealand, and this is a really a strange selection. He basically was, he was charged with rape, and he was found not guilty in a criminal trial. But he told the court in that trial, "I tried having sex with the woman twice." Like, she might have said no a few times, but it wasn't dozens of times. And a friend of Kuggeleijn told the cricketer had said that he had been trying for a while and that he had finally cracked it. And then the head selector for New Zealand, I get given a list of players to choose from, and we have gone with a resilient character from a bowling point of view. Now, Kuggeleijn's like the 33rd leading wicket taker in the Plunket Shield. I'm not sure why they decided to pick him. Like, he wasn't making an irresistible case for selection. So why would you pick this person with such a concerning record? A criminal. Not a criminal.
Yeah. The thing is, they've already picked him in one-day games. It's kind of like he did get found not guilty, although firstly there was a hung trial. So the first jury.
I don't understand how that even happened. I mean, come on, he confessed.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, that he got found not guilty in the second trial. The first trial didn't reach a verdict, but not guilty is not the same as they're not saying he's innocent.
Not innocent.
Exactly. And so, according to the burden of proof, he was found not guilty, but it doesn't mean that he's innocent. And surely, a sports body should have a very strong worded clause in its whatever its agreement with its players, that behaviour that is unacceptable and the right sort of language will result in our own penalties, regardless of what the case might be, if there's any sort of legal proceedings. And it was he was playing for New Zealand a matter of only a few weeks or a couple of months after his trial ended. So I've got a quote here that I think's quite interesting. That it was from Jeff Lemon, writing in Wisden at the time. He said, "This doesn't mean that no one is redeemable, but redemption needs remorse and demonstrable action. Kuggeleijn and New Zealand cricket could have shown both without contradicting his defence." And so they could have said, "This is an unacceptable thing that you've done. We're suspending you from all cricket for 3 years," or something, or something. But instead, they have done nothing, and they protect him in press conferences to the extent where I think a woman had a banner removed a couple of years ago for New Zealand, where she had a "no means no" statement, and the security removed the banner. So I think they've handled this very, very poorly, Cricket New Zealand, I think.
I mean, I looked at during the Test match. I was looking at him bowling, and I looked up the Shield stats, the Plunket Shield, whatever it is, and I was like, why was he selected? I don't understand why you got Trent Bolt. I know he gave up his contract, but he said he's available to play. You got Bolt or you got this person who isn't actually very good. Why on earth would you pick him and not Bolt?
It's amazing that they've said, we're not going to pick Trent Bolt on sort of non-cricketing reasons. We've chosen to not consider Trent Bolt because he has declined a central contract. So they've sort of set a precedent for, we're not exclusively picking the side on cricket reasons. They're more concerned about Trent Bolt turning down a central contract than they are about the whole situation with this other guy. So that's, yeah. On the Bolt thing, I think we'll get to that, but go on, Menace.
No, I was just going to say, I think New Zealand cricket just got this one wrong. So
Very
it's,
wrong.
It's a huge error. I just want to cut this short because Fatima's got to go in a few minutes. So I want to get to the listener questions. And then after Fatima's gone, Paul and I will wrap up with Can't Let It Go. And I actually just want to quickly touch on the WNCL final. Now, Muggers, do you want to put up all the questions for us now that have come in from the chat? And we will go through them. All right. Martin Lawrence. Well, if the batters don't need a coach, why do we need a batting coach then? Fatima makes sense for Martin, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, everyone, you never stop learning. I don't see why someone like Steve Smith would never still need a coach.
The thing about that is the Ian Chappell school of, I didn't need a coach because I could just turn around and ask Keith Stackpole how to play the shot. Like the where it ends is that golf players and tennis players have coaches. Like, the level of professionalism that they have is off the charts more than cricketers. If they have coaches, then every cricketer probably should have their own individual batting coach. That'd be one for the old people to get angry about.
I mean, a good coach knows the right time to make a comment. And clearly Divinito missed the mark in that collapse. He should have got into the middle order and said, hey, what are you friggin' doing? All right, next question, Muggers. Rajath. I'm also surprised that someone with tons of experience like Vittori did not put in some sense into those batters. And actually, Jeff Lawson, I mentioned before, was on the radio. He said the same thing. He thought Vittori would be a wealth of knowledge in this. Do you think he makes a valid point here, Rajath, Fatima?
Is this for New Zealand?
No, for Australia. He's our bowling coach.
Sorry. Yes.
I think that the only thing is that we've also got to remember, if I was playing someone at tennis who was better than me, and I lost the first set 6-4 and thought, okay, I've got to try something different, and then I ended up losing the second set 6-2, and you criticize my tactics for that, I might have lost anyway. Like these guys have gone out there with the intention of, we can't just sit on the splice because we're going to get out. We've got to be aggressive, and that's what I've been urging them to do. And they obviously got it wrong, but it was a catastrophic morning of 9 for 52. But it is they are playing the way that I wanted them to play. It just didn't work out on that occasion. It doesn't mean that it's always going to be the wrong way of doing it.
All right, Muggers, next one. Okay, Brewer 74. Is there a better batter keeper than Carey that we can fly in? Wow.
Glenn Maxwell.
He can't bowl and keep. Josh Inglis scored 100 from Western Australian on the weekend, yesterday, 116 off of 130 balls, Inglis. So that's good. Fatima, do you rate Carey?
I do. I think he's all right. I mean,
okay.
It's tough to base on Australia because it's tough to base on India because India's difficult. But I think he's done a decent job.
Yeah, I agree. I think he doesn't inspire strong feelings with me either way. He looked pretty ordinary getting out a couple of times in this series so far. So yeah, maybe I would bring someone else in, a right-hander. But he looked good in the first innings of the first test. So he may well still come good.
All right. Now, last question before Fatima has to go. Muggers, is there one for Fatima in particular, or just bring one up? Okay, obviously not. Trishanku, Indian batsmen love spin. It's pace that always gets our wickets. Had Australia persisted with their pace quartet along with line, I guess Australian bowling would have been more effective. I disagree with this. I think we had to pick spinners. Fatima, where do you come down?
I don't understand why Cummins didn't bowl himself until I mean, he bowled himself way late in India's second innings. Why didn't he just try a few overs and see what happened?
I don't think he did bowl in the second innings.
Maybe I'm thinking the first innings.
But I think by the second. Oh, look, I think to answer the question, I hope that India take that theme and when the next come to Australia, and I hope that when we play them at the Wacker, they come out with Akshar Patel, Ravi Ashwin, and Jadeja and Kuldeep Yadav. It's great that we've got our fast bowlers, but those wickets are just so suited for spin. I think that Scott Boland probably would have bowled okay on it and might have picked up a couple of wickets, a bit like Shami and Siraj did. That they bowled well, but it's the spin that's going to dominate.
All right.
I still would like to see Stark though.
Yes, same, 100%. All right, Fatima. Well, we've run out of time with you, so thank you for joining us on Cricket Unfiltered. We'll catch up with you soon.
Thank you very much. I hope to be back very soon.
Thanks, Fatima. Have a great day.
Thanks. You too. Bye-bye.
All right. So we are now. Any more questions there, muggers?
There's one from Terry Johnson. Oh no, we go. Yep.
The 100 cricket tournament has elevated women's cricket. That's from Shay Manju. I have to say it's fantastic, and I think all the competitions around the world have the WPL, the Caribbean Premier League has a women's cricket element to it. So, slowly but surely, the rest of the world is catching up with the WBBL.
I agree. There's one from Terry Johnson that says, "Will we win any games?" Meta, don't answer. Don't answer. It's for Paul. Look, Terry. It's not looking great, is it? But look, I'm in for what do they say? In for a lamb, in for a goat, or whatever. I might as well be hanged for a lamb as a sheep. I think it is. Yes, we're going to win 2 more games, and it's going to be 2-2.
I think Terry might have had a bet on your 2-2. That's why it's a bit sour. All right, now let's continue. Let's finish the show. Thanks for everybody that's watching live and making comments and putting in questions. We really appreciate it. So just want to wrap up the cricket headlines. The Women's National Cricket League final is this Saturday, and Tasmania have won the right to host the final, and they're playing South Australia. Tasmania are the reigning title holders. South Australia have won the title only once before in 2015-16. So they both have won it once each in their history. And, it was a thrilling end to the Women's National Cricket League. Basically, Queensland and South Australia's last round game effectively was a semi-final because the winner went through to play Tasmania. And South Australia won a thriller with Amanda Jade Wellington hitting 24 off 18 in the lower order for South Australia to steal the game in the last over. So they play Tasmania, and that is this weekend. Just for Queensland, Laura Harris in that match where Queensland lost, Laura Harris hit 50 off 27 deliveries, and she's going to the Delhi Capitals in the WPL for just $80,000, which I think is a bargain because she is so destructive. I think she's going to make a huge difference in those conditions. And I just see, actually, while recording this, the UP Warriors have announced that Alyssa Healy will be their skipper for the first season.
Excellent. That's a very, very good choice. I think she's also someone that they got at a fair bit of a discount as well. I thought in many ways she might have been the one that would go for the most.
Yeah, she's just got that power game, which you don't see a lot of in women's cricket. There's very few of the players that have that immense power. So, yeah, look out for her in the WPL and look out for the WNCL final this weekend. It is a great competition, the WNCL. It's really entertaining cricket. All right, let's move on to Can't Let It Go. That little bit of cricket news you just can't let go through to the keeper. Paul, what is your Can't Let It Go?
I don't know why this fascinates me so much, but it has for years. And today, totally unexpectedly, I stumbled across an article and I was just like, I actually had to ration my reading of it line by line. I was so eager and I had to savor each word. There's a possibility, I think it's maybe a little bit of clickbait, but there's a possibility of a thawing in the 45-year feud between Ian Botham and Ian Chappell. And I don't know why I care about that, but I just think it'd be so nice if they could become on civil terms for each other. And I don't know why, but they had an altercation in 1977 in a bar in Melbourne. Each person has different views on what happened. I tend to think Chappelle's is probably closer to the truth. But ever since then, they have loathed each other. And I didn't know this when I was a kid watching when Ian Chappell would be commentating on Ian Botham. And Ian Chappell, he's still able to say, oh, great shot and everything else. Like he can kind of separate the two. But there was that memorable scene in 1998 when, before the Ashes, they brought Ian Botham in for commentary for the first time. And at the Gabba, ahead of the first test match, they had him on a current affair the night before. And they interviewed them together on the ground. And they're standing like a metre apart. And they asked, whoever's the host asked them a couple of questions about cricket. Then they said, you two famously don't get on. Are you going to have a beer after the game? And Ian Botham clearly was at the point where he was ready to sort of extend an olive branch, because he sort of said, well, we might have a glass of red wine. But unfortunately, as he was saying that at exactly the same time, Ian Chappell was saying, well, I won't be. And then 12 years later, they almost came to blows in the car park at the Adelaide Oval. I was at that test match. I left to catch a plane a few minutes. I just missed it. My friend actually saw it happen. And so the fact that they are now potentially filming, what is it? I read the quote out. It was that they... it seemed all hope was lost until the pair was spied recently with a TV crew at the Golden Gate Hotel in South Melbourne. It's believed the rivalry will be covered by prolific sports documentary makers Jam TV, and the production aired in Australia mid-year to coincide with the Ashes in England. So there's probably no smoothing of they're probably going to just say how much they hate each other. But anyway, I've taken 5 minutes up for a little strange thing that I find fascinating, but I can't let it go.
I sent you earlier in the week. Chappelle was on the radio talking about Australia's collapse. That was peak Chappelle. You got to go and listen to it. He pulled out all the favourites, talking about when he was playing spin in the Shield and use your bloody feet and get to the pitch of the ball and all this sort of stuff. So yeah, Chappelle is fantastic, absolutely fantastic. He's been on this show. I've always said that it was the most nervous I've been was calling Chappelle to appear on this show. So good stuff with.
I always said one of my my hopes in life is to have a beer with Ian Chappell and for him to punch me. Those are my two. Yeah. That would be a great night.
Well, I've got his phone number. I'll just flick it on to you. Just send him a message.
Hey, Chappelle, can we have a chat and talk about how wonderful Steve Waugh was?
You just say, hey, Chappelle, it's Tabsy. Can we meet at the bar and just rock up? Well, I think Tabsy will turn up soon. All right. So my can't let it go is I didn't realize, but Virat Kohli was stumped in the last test match. And that's the first time he's ever been stumped in test cricket. That is such a testament to how good his footwork is, that he doesn't get beaten in flight outside the crease. Just incredible.
Yeah, I saw that stat as well. Good ball from Kuhnemann. It sounds like that's what they're going to use to justify picking him for every test match from now on as well.
All right. Well, I think we're coming to the end. Muggers, are there any more questions or comments that we didn't get to, or we're going to wrap this Cricket Unfiltered up? We've gone past now. Now, just remember, if you are watching on YouTube, go and subscribe to us on every podcast app. There is a lot of audio-only stuff there with interviews with 15 Australian captains, numerous cricketers. So go back through the back catalogue. There's lots of great stuff there. Find me on Twitter at amenas. Paul, where can the listeners find you?
On TikTok at paul.dennett and on Twitter at pauldennett_. That's DENNETT.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening to Cricket Unfiltered. I'm due back on with another show soon. I'm going to record something with Gav, Joshi and Barrett Sundaresan, who've released a book, Miracle Makers, about India's last tour of Australia, where they won famously. The Gabba won the series. So I'm going to be talking to them. Paul's, of course, invited. And then hopefully we'll be back next week to preview the third test. So thanks everybody for listening.
And thanks everyone who wrote comments during the show. We didn't get a chance to get to all of them, but I'll read them all after the show and I'll think about what I would have said.
Thank you.